You are now tuned in to Peach State TV, where any gym is home. www.peachstatehoops.com. Enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the JumpOffPlusToday.com show. I'm your host, Keil. Today is the second episode of Coach's Corner, where I've got Southeastern Hoops Report lead analyst Hemingway here with us to talk a little bit about what you need to do to become a complete basketball player. And today we're going to look at that question from a defensive perspective. Coach, how's everything going today?
Everything's going great, Kyle. Good to be here.
That's great. Let's talk a little bit about defensively what it takes to become a complete basketball player. Some of the things, even if you might not be the best athlete, you might not be the quickest player, you might not be the smartest player, but when you can combine all those three things together, you can still be a complete player.
Sure thing, Kyle. A lot of times basketball players, when they think about developing their basketball game, they think about primarily just playing on the offensive end. But if you're a high school basketball player, the game is 32 minutes long, and at least half of the game is going to be spent on the defensive end. So you're talking about at least 16 minutes of the game in which you can help your team, you can help yourself win the basketball game, which should be the objective anytime you go out there and step on the court. What is it that I can do to help my team to win? And as far as defensively, what can you do to become a more complete defensive player? I think number one, it starts with a mentality. It's definitely an attitude that you must have. Not everybody can be a great scorer. Not everybody can be a great shot blocker. But I think most anybody can be a pretty good defender if you have that mentality to do so. And I think that starts with the attitude of I'm ready to play. And the first image that comes into my mind is the old Duke teams that used to slap the floor and really get ready to play that way. And from there, if you're ready to play, you're going to be more apt to, make the hustle plays, dive on the floors for the loose balls. One of the things that we try to do with the high school team that I coach, we keep up with deflections. We keep up with, how many rebounds you get, and you actually win this particular defensive game, not by the amount of points that you score, but are you getting rebounds? Are you taking charges? Are you getting deflections? And I think those are the types of things that can really show that whether or not you're really playing hard or not. And most of all, when I evaluate here at the Peach State events, I certainly look at a player's offensive skill sets, but I also watch, how they play on the defensive end as well too, because that's really kind of like a flashlight into a player's mentality. If a player just plays hard on the offensive end but not on the defensive end, well, that tells me that you really don't have a motor that's going to translate into the next level. So some of the questions that I ask, when I'm evaluating players as to whether or not they are a complete defensive player is, number one, do you run the court? Are you running the court, to the offensive end? More importantly, are you running back on defense? I see a lot of great players that come through these Peach State events, and I see a lot of great hustle plays, where they'll dive out of bounds on one end of the court, but then they'll come back, get a deflection, tip the ball out of bounds on the other end. Secondly, do you pressure the basketball? Furthermore, can you pressure the basketball? There's a lot of players that they try to pressure, but they're not in stances. They don't have good technique, and they end up getting beat off of the drive. Furthermore, I see great athletes that don't really care a whole lot about pressuring the basketball. So that's something that you have to take into consideration. Another thing to think about is, do you give help? When the ball is driven to the baseline, or whether it's driven to the middle, are you locked into your man and you don't have vision, or are you a player that can give help and make that offensive player make the extra pass and then close out on your man, and then finally do you rebound, or are you just kind of what we like to call in the coaching world, are you a tuxedo player where you're not really interested in mixing it up. And so when it comes down to being a complete defensive player, you've got to do all of those things. You can't just be a player that plays on the offensive end, but you've got to really work to be a complete player. And finally, I think the thing that can really tip all of this off is, do you talk on the defensive end? Are you communicating with your teammates? And I see a great example of this is, I saw this when she played in high school, and now in her great collegiate career. Maya Moore was a great talker on the defensive end. She was constantly talking to her teammates, saying, hey, you've got to provide help here. Hey, be sure and pick up that shooter there. So those are the type of things that I look at when we talk about the question, what does it mean to be a complete player?
Those are some great pieces of tidbits to take home and think about. But when you talk about being a complete basketball player, it's important to remember that the defensive end is as crucial as the offensive end. So often you see kids, coasting on the defensive end and doing those types of things where, from a college perspective, even if you get on campus and you're lucky enough to get a scholarship, it's hard to get on the floor if you don't play defense.
No doubt. And Keil, I'll leave you and our viewers with this last question. I can remember sitting here a few years ago, talking to a college coach from a Division I program from one of the BCS conferences, and he said, the number one question that I have to ask is, who can you guard? And if you can't guard somebody at the next level, it doesn't matter how much you can score. If you can't guard somebody, if you can't stop somebody, it doesn't really matter.
That's a great piece of advice for you. Well, as always, this episode of JumpOffPlusToday.com show, Peach State Basketball. Got Coach Jonathan Hemingway with me. I'm Kyle Moore signing off.